بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So this is our second lesson on the status of the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the first lesson last week, we covered 4 points. There are 8 points altogether, and these 4 points are taken from the commentary of Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh on the creed of Tahaawiyyah, rahimahullah. So, if you recall from the previous lesson, Sheikh mentioned 4 points. The first one is what is the definition of a Sahabi, the definition of a companion, someone who met the Messenger of Allah sallallahu whilst being a believer, and he died upon that. And we mentioned a number of texts from the Quran and from the Hadith, and basically from those texts there were 4 key points that were derived. First of all, that all companions who died upon Iman, they are promised forgiveness and pleasure from Allah Azza wa Jal. Number 2, that all of the Sahaba are udul, they are trustworthy, they are upright, trustworthy, truthful, and this is by testimony of the Quran. Thirdly, that reviling the companions basically is a contradiction to what we find in the Quran, and therefore it's prohibited to revile them, and this is something that we will speak about in today's lesson in a bit more detail, inshallah. And fourthly, that the companions are not all at the same level. There are degrees and levels among them. That was the first point. The second point was to do with love and loyalty to the Sahaba. Love and loyalty. So to love the companions is obviously wajib, because by necessity of the Quran. And following on from that is to have loyalty to the companions. Loyalty. Al-walaya. What is loyalty? Loyalty, what's the practical manifestation of loyalty? First of all, it is to actually have actual love, the feeling of love in the heart. Secondly, it is to praise them verbally, praise them at every stage or reason or situation in which they are praised. Thirdly, that all of their actions are interpreted in the best way possible. All of their actions are interpreted in the best light possible, because we know, because they are praised in the Quran, that they sought the face of Allah. Right? They were sincere in what they were doing. And even if they erred, their actions are interpreted in the best light or the best way possible. And fourthly, that we defend them, right? Because from the necessities of love is loyalty and aid, right? And nusra, to aid somebody. And so these are 4 of the elements, the practical elements of showing love to them. That love obviously is a moderate love. It's not a love that goes to excess, nor is it a type of love where you love one set of companions and that love leads you to hate another set of companions, right? It's a moderate, legislated type of love. And that was point number 2. Point number 3, we mentioned that the companions themselves are at various levels. They are not all the same, and this is clearly alluded to in the Quran. So we mentioned the various levels. First of all, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and the Khulafa, 4 of the Khulafa, they are among the 10 who were granted promised paradise. and then you have the generality of the Muhajirin, and after them you have those who witnessed the Battle of Badr from the Muhajirin and the Ansar, and then you have the generality of the Ansar, fourthly, and then anyone after that who became a Muslim after the conquest of Mecca, right? So the scholars have derived the different levels, of excellence of the companions. And the fourth point that we finished with in the previous lesson was the fact that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum are obviously, they are men, they are not prophets, they don't have the status of prophets, they are not infallible, and they can make ijtihad, they are able to make rulings and have views and opinions in matters of religion, and they can also be right and they can also be wrong. And the fact that when it comes to their errors in ijtihad, then as we said before, that because they are declared trustworthy and they are praiseworthy and they are guaranteed and promised paradise, it means that we cannot speak ill of them in the ijtihads that they made. Rather, we interpret always in the best light possible, and we can't accuse any of the companions of seeking the world or have any kind of worldly motives, because this would then lead to revilement of them. So, we can't speak in any way that involves any type of belittlement or speaking ill of them or anything of that nature, right? So we on the one hand, we don't claim that they are infallible and they cannot make mistakes because they are men. And on the other hand, we acknowledge their virtue and their excellence and that they are best of Allah's creation after the prophets and messengers. And that whatever they fell into of any kind of ijtihad, maybe an error or something that opposed the text or maybe whatever, it's always interpreted in the best light, in the best way possible. So that's really just a review of the previous lessons. We're going to continue from this point, inshallah. So the fifth point that we should know and understand is the whole issue of reviling the companions, of speaking ill of the companions. And what's the ruling on that? So, first of all, to revile the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, is it's like a tabarru'. Tabarru' means that you are freeing yourself or you are distancing yourself from the companion or the companions that you are speaking ill of. And this really is the opposite of mahabba and walaya, right? Because we are supposed to have love for the companions and loyalty to the companions. If you speak ill of a companion or the companions, then essentially you are making tabarru'. You are saying, because a sub-revilement is adamur rida, which means that you are not pleased. If you revile somebody, clearly that means you are not pleased with that person. So a sub, which is revilement, is adamur rida, not being pleased with the one that you are reviling, and also not being happy with his action. This is the opposite of being pleased with ar-rida. Rida means that you are pleased with that person, you praise that person, you are happy with the action, whereas a sub is the opposite. It entails bughd, dislike, hatred, and it entails like freeing yourself, right? This action of a sub-revilement is of the companions is haram in the Sharia. This is the ruling of revilement, right? It is haram in the Sharia. Why? Because the Messenger of Allah, he explicitly said, "La tasubbu ashabi, la tasubbu ashabi." This is a clear, explicit prohibition from reviling the companions. So, every type of revilement of the companions is muharram, it is unlawful. And the Messenger of Allah, he emphasized this even further, because he said, Man sabba ashabi faqad adhani. Man sabba ashabi faqad adhani. Which means, whoever reviled my companions, then he has harmed me. Then he has harmed me. And we know that to harm the Messenger of Allah sallallahu, to harm him, that this is, it's a major sin, and it's, severely prohibited. And likewise, to abuse and harm the companions, also it is prohibited. Allah Azza wa Jal, He said in Surah Al-Ahzab, verse 58, وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ بِغَيْرِ مَا اكْتَسَبُوا فَقَدْ احْتَمَلُوا بُهْتَانًا وَإِثْمًا مُبِينًا. Those who harm or abuse the believing men and the believing women on account of something that they did not do or earn, then they have carried, a mighty slander, a fabrication, and a clear sin. So, from these texts, you can clearly see that to abuse the companions entails al-ithmul mubin. It is clear sin. And it is from the severely prohibited, unlawful deeds. Now, when we speak of a sub, reviling, what do we mean? What does this actually mean? It can show in different ways. You can curse, you can make la'an, right? You can curse, you can make tanaqqus. Tanaqqus means to belittle the status, to belittle, to speak ill, to belittle. You can make ta'an fi adalatihim. Ta'an meaning that you can now attack their trustworthiness, whether they're really trustworthy, whether they're really truthful, whether they're really upright. Right? So what you are doing now is you're now attacking the integrity of a companion or the companions. Or you can, so you attack the integrity, or you attack the religion, the deen, right? Meaning, was he really pious? Were they really pious? Right? Were they really believers? You're now attacking and undermining the religion of the companion or the companions. So these are some of the different ways which all of which entail, which come under the general category of sub, right? La'an, ta'an in the adala, tanaqqus, belittling them, questioning the actual religion, their deen, right? So, all of this is, the different ways, and then also a person could, there's different types of ways. You could maybe revile some of the companions. You could revile them from the angle of their religion only. You could revile them in terms of from a worldly point of view only, not the religion. So you're not attacking them for their religion or questioning the religion, but some worldly issue that you are speaking ill of them, right? Or it could be you are speaking ill of their adala. Or it could be from the angle of the religion, like we said. You could say that, this companion wasn't really a believer, right? He had hypocrisy. So here now you are reviling the religion. This is religion now. This is dini. Or it could be dunyawi. Dunyawi meaning that you could say, he wasn't really knowledgeable, or he had a love for wealth, or he had a love for position, or he did jihad because of booty, wealth, possessions, or because of a woman, or whatever it might be. So here, this is all worldly, right? You are diminishing them and reviling them or speaking ill of them on account of pure worldly reasons, right? So all of these are different ways in which people in the past have, and some of them continue to, speak ill of the companions. Okay, so we find that the scholars of the Muslims, obviously we know from all of this that to revile the companions is unlawful, it is haram, and we find that amongst the scholars of the Muslims, they have explained different views. Because at Tahaawiyyah he said, وَبُغْضُهُمْ كُفْرٌ وَنِفَاقٌ وَطُغْيَانٌ, that to dislike them is disbelief, and it is hypocrisy, and it is transgression. Right? And this disbelief and hypocrisy, this could either be major disbelief, it could be major disbelief, it expels a person from Islam, or it could be minor disbelief. It could be something that doesn't really expel you from the fold of Islam. And so we see that the scholars of the Muslims, they had different statements on this position, on this issue of reviling the companions. So from them is, for example, the statement of Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, and from his views is, he said that anyone who reviles the companions, even a single companion, then he is a disbeliever. Right? What's the reason that he is a disbeliever? What's the angle for his disbelief? Right? The reason is because it's because you are denying the praise of Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran. Essentially, you are basically saying that Allah never told the truth in the Quran. Because Allah in the Quran has praised all of the companions. He's guaranteed and promised them paradise. He spoke of their sincerity, of their truthfulness, and so on and so forth. He's praised them. So when a person comes along and he reviles the companion, speaks ill of him, that the angle of kufr, the angle of disbelief here, is that this is takdeeb, right? It's basically disbelieving what Allah has said in the Quran. And likewise, the Prophet ﷺ himself also, he praised them and spoke well of them and prohibited from, so it also, essentially you are making takdeeb. You are essentially saying that the Messenger ﷺ never spoke the truth, because you are not believing the Messenger in what he said by reviling a companion or a group of the companions. That's one view from Imam Ahmad. Another view that's from Imam Ahmad is that a person does not become a disbeliever with the major disbelief, because a person could be reviling the companion on account of ta'wil, meaning that he's falling into some type of interpretation, an interpretation of some historical event. He has some misunderstanding. He has, and he's speaking from that angle, and not from the angle that he's necessarily rejecting the testimony of Allah for the companions, but it's some type of ta'wil or some interpretation or things of that nature. That which we find from the majority of the Salaf is that the first view, that anyone who reviles or attacks the companion or the companions, that person is a disbeliever. And they carry this from the first angle, because this person is essentially rejecting the texts of the Quran and the Sunnah that praise the companions, guarantee them paradise, declare them upright, trustworthy, and so on. They say that someone who reviles a companion is essentially, he is a heretic, he is a zindiq. And so the point being that it appears from this discussion that there are actually different scenarios, different situations, different circumstances in which a person might be reviling the companions. So Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he discussed this issue and he provided a nice analysis, a nice categorization of all of the different scenarios that could possibly exist. And so this gives us a nice understanding of the whole topic of when does reviling a companion or the companions become disbelief, and when is it not disbelief. And that's what we'll discuss now. So basically in his discussion, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, this is at the end of his book As-Sarim al-Maslul ala Shatim al-Rasul. This is one of his books that he wrote earlier on in his life. in refutation of a dhimmi meaning a Jew or a Christian from the Ahlul Kitab living among the Muslims. And so this individual, he reviled the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he wrote this book as a refutation and to explain the ruling upon this of revilement upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so within that book, towards the end of that book, he provided some detail about this issue, and he presented numerous situations. Some of those situations are major disbelief, and some of those situations are affairs which are basically prohibited. So let's discuss them one by one. The first scenario or the first situation is when a person, he reviles all of the companions without exception. Essentially, he says all of the companions are evil people, and he has no loyalty towards them whatsoever. No love, no affiliation, no attachment. And this statement here, or this position, is disbelief. By consensus, this is disbelief. This is unanimously agreed upon. This is disbelief. And in fact, it is from the way of the Zanadiqa. Zanadiqa are the heretics who pretend to be Muslim, but really they conceal disbelief inside. And it is from the way of the Malahida, the Madiyin. These are basically people of disbelief, and they detest and dislike all of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And they speak ill of them, saying that they are just ignorant people who do not understand, and they're just people pursuing the world. All these evil, vile statements. So anyone who speaks ill of the companions in this manner, no doubt this person is a person of disbelief, is a person of zandaqa, of heresy, and this position cannot emanate from any heart that loves Allah, loves the Messenger, loves the book, loves the Sunnah. It's not possible. It's not possible for this to emanate from any from a person who loves the Quran, the Sunnah. Simply not possible. Anyhow, this is very clear, very apparent. The second scenario, or the second situation, is when a person reviles the majority of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum out of rage, out of hatred, right? This is what we call taghayyud, right? He has rage, hatred, enmity towards the companions, taghayyudan, out of hatred and rage, right? So this is what we find from the Rafidah, the Shia, the Rafidah, and their likes. They revile the majority of the companions. They say most of the companions were they detest them and they hate them, and they claim that most of the companions, they abandoned Ali, they didn't support Ali, and they instead they supported Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and whatever, and so they have this intense hatred and rage against the companions of Allah's Messenger. So they revile them, on account of this particular belief that they have. Now, the majority of the Salaf, they are of the view that this is actual disbelief, right? That this is, they make takfir of the people upon this way. And in fact, Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that anyone who reviles any faction amongst the companions out of ghayz, right? Taghayyudan, meaning out of rage and enmity and hatred, that this is, in an issue like in the issue of religion, then they are kuffar. They are people of disbelief, right? And the evidence for this is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal. he mentions at the end, or he mentions at Surah Al-Fath towards the end, ذَلِكَ مَثَلُهُمْ فِي التَّوْرَاةِ وَمَثَلُهُم فِي الْإِنْجِيلِ كَزَرْعٍ أَخْرَجَ شَطْأَهُ فَآزَرَهُ فَاسْتَغْلَظَ فَاسْتَوَى عَلَى سُوقِهِ يُعْجِبُ الزُّرَّاعَ لِيَغِيظَ بِهِمُ الْكُفَّارِ. So here at the end of Surah Al-Fath, the 48th chapter, verse 29, Allah Azza wa Jal gives an example of the mention of the companions in the Torah and in the Injil, right? And the similitude is given is like when a seed is planted and the stalk, it shoots up, right? And it has firmness and strength, like it's like a good, sturdy, strong plant, and it grows, and it amazes the farmer or the tiller. And at the end of this verse, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, لِيَغِيظَ بِهِمُ الْكُفَّارِ, that Allah may enrage the disbelievers thereby. Right? So this is a proof, the scholars have used that as a proof to show that anyone who has rage and hatred towards the companions, this ayah is a proof for their takfir, for them being people of disbelief. And so this is the istidlal of Imam Malik rahimahullah and others. So essentially this second situation now is where you, out of hatred and rage towards the companions, the majority of the companions, that this now is a person of disbelief. Right? This is also very apparent. The proof is very clear, very apparent. Right? So meaning there's no difference about this, because the ayah is very, very clear, just like the first situation is very, very clear as well. The third scenario now is when a person reviles the companions not because of taghayyur, not because he's enraged, but because there's because he was ignorant, or he didn't recognize or know the good nature of the action of the companions, right? So he spoke about some of them or some of their specific actions. So he said, for example, this companion, he's got little knowledge. Or this companion, he was a bit harsh. He had some harshness in him. Or this companion, he didn't really understand. He lacked understanding. Or, this companion, he was chasing after the world. Right? So you can see that this is not the same as the previous example. This is not because you have some rage or hatred or anything like that. No. But it's where you are ignorant of the realities of the goodness and the excellence, and with respect to some of the companions or a specific companion, you speak in a way which is tanaqqus, which is belittlement, right? And the ruling on this is that it is muharram, it is unlawful. This is you falling into a sin. It's a major sin, and it opposes the mahabba and the nusra and the walaya, the love, the aid and the loyalty that we are supposed to have towards the companions. This contradicts it. You can't speak like this with respect to the companions. And this is the type of revilement that does not enter into major disbelief. Right? This is what does not enter into major disbelief. And this is how we understand the view of certain scholars who say that reviling the companions is not major disbelief. They are speaking about this particular thing here. Right? They're speaking about this type of reviling here. So this basically here, this type of revilement is like, oh, it's to do with affairs of the world, basically. You know, where you say that he had little knowledge, or you might cast doubt on his integrity. Not integrity, sorry. Like, the point being, some of these issues which are used, for example, he didn't have enough knowledge, or he wasn't knowledgeable, or you might say that he had love for the world, right? These things in and of themselves, they do not negate a person's adala, right? So just because a companion has less knowledge compared to another companion, has that now removed his adala, his trustworthiness? The answer is no, right? Lacking knowledge or having little knowledge is not a sign of untrustworthiness. That doesn't mean that you are untrustworthy, that you are not truthful. So a person who uses this to speak ill of a companion, that doesn't entail, removing of his adala. Likewise, if you said, loving the world, if you love the world in a way that doesn't affect your religion, that also is not a negation of adala, trustworthiness, right? Like we said, a person can be rich, a person can be wealthy, a person can like good clothes and good appearance and whatever, but as long as he's fulfilling his obligations and he's giving the sadaqah and the zakah and it's not interfering with his religion, and he's not attached to that wealth, he's not enslaved to that wealth, that in itself is not a proof that a person has now lost trustworthiness, right? So these types of things that some people fall into, where they use them to say, well, this companion didn't have much knowledge, and that companion, he had lots of wealth and he was chasing after the world. This is a revilement, no doubt. It's a revilement to speak like this. But do these things, in reality, do they make a companion untrustworthy? And the answer is no. They don't make a companion untrustworthy just because of these things, right? Al-thiqa, wal-deen, wal-amana. They're not removed just because you have less knowledge, or because you have lots of wealth, or because of, whatever it might be. So, this type of revilement here does not enter into major disbelief, because if you think about these types of statements, these types of statements are not rejecting what is in the Quran, right? There's no rejection here of the companions being promised paradise, that they are believers, that they are upright, trustworthy. There's no takdeeb here of Allah and His Messenger in what they said about the companions. Rather, these are just things which a person might say because of ignorance, because of misinterpretation of events, and it's from that angle. Obviously he's mistaken. It's su'ul adab, it's bad manners, it's evil manners, and it is revilement. So obviously this is a major sin. It's not major kufr. It's a revilement. It's masabba. It opposes al-hub wal-nusra wal-walaya. It opposes all these things of love, loyalty, aid and support. So how are these people treated? And as the scholars say, that these people are to be given ta'zir. Ta'zir means they are to be disciplined with some sort or type of punishment, right? So the ruler, the qadi, whoever, such a person is taken, and he would be disciplined in some way or another at the discretion of the ruler, the judge, because this now affects the religion, right? To attack the companions is something that undermines the religion, and this is not allowed to take root in a society, right? So this person would be disciplined. The fourth state is, right, this fourth state is less serious than the third one. And it is when someone speaks ill of a companion or speaks ill of him or reviles him due to his belief that the action he did was wrong, that he shouldn't have done that action was erroneous, and he should have done what is correct. Right? So, for example, things which happen, such as, like the killing of Uthman, for example, some of the companions might have decided to not get involved, not to get involved. And, for example, what Ali might have done, radiyallahu anhu, in deciding not to go after the assassins of Uthman at the beginning, to not go after them. Or they might find what Muawiyah might have done of, doing whatever he did. Right? So all of these, the Sahaba made ijtihad, and a person might come along and he might think, well, what he did there was wrong. That's wrong. He did, because of his belief that was the wrong action to take in that situation. So here this person might come and he might, speak ill of a companion, and he might say, well, in this situation he should have done such and such, it would have been obligatory for him to do such and such, why did he not do such and such, or whatever, right? He's speaking like from this type of with this type of speech. So here this is tied to a companion and to a specific event, right? It's not even about everything about the companion. It's about a companion in relation to a specific event, an ijtihad that he made or something of that nature, and then it's his belief that this was a mistake that he made, and he speaks ill of him, in this way. Okay, so now we know this is unlawful as well. What's the ruling? We know that in the third example, that the person in the third situation, the person is to be punished and to be given discipline. But what about this one here? What happens to this person? And so there's some difference of opinion about whether anything should be done to him physically. But what is agreed upon is that this person, by way of the tongue and the pen, whatever this person is saying, or the shubha or the misconception, that it is shown rejection, right? Like in other words, with speech, meaning that you discipline him with speech. You tell him that this is wrong what you are doing, and you also write to refute the misconception or whatever it might be. But as for, do you do something physically? Does the ruler, does the judge, is he taken? Is he disciplined in some way? The scholars obviously differ. Some of them say, well, yes, he is disciplined. Others say that he's disciplined with the tongue, right? Meaning he's told off and rebuked and so on and so forth. So these are the four levels then of reviling the companions. So this was issue number 5. We now move to issue number 6, and sorry? What was that? Yeah, so this is point number 5, and the 4 levels of speaking ill of the companions. Yeah? Okay, so now we're moving on to issue number 6. Issue number 6, yeah. So, issue number 6 is regarding the statement of At-Tahawi rahimahullah, وَحُبُّهُمْ دِينٌ وَإِيمَانٌ وَإِحْسَانٌ. Right? وَحُبُّهُمْ دِينٌ وَإِيمَانٌ وَإِحْسَانٌ. To love them is deen, iman and ihsan. Right? To love them is deen, iman and ihsan. So point number 6 is to do with how is loving the Sahaba deen, iman and ihsan. Right? How is loving the Sahaba deen, iman and ihsan? So first of all, loving the Sahaba is deen. Why is it deen? Because Allah Azza wa Jal has praised them and to believe Allah, to make tasdeeq of Allah, of Allah's report, right, is deen. Right? Because Allah praised them and spoke well of them. So it is from deen, from religion, to make tasdeeq of what Allah has said in the Quran. This is the angle from which loving the Sahaba is deen. It is deen. Right? So, from the texts, for example, Allah Azza wa Jal, He said, وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ بَعْدُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْدٍ. The believing men and women, they are friends, allies, protectors, one to another. Right? And obviously the Sahaba are believers, we are believers. So this means that we are awliya to the Sahaba. And so because Allah mentioned this in the Quran, therefore, to love the Sahaba, therefore, is from deen. It becomes deen. Right? Very, very clear. This is clear evidence. Al-walaya, awliya, here, it means al-mahabba wa-nusra. This is the meaning of al-walaya, meaning, to have love and to aid and support. And so the greatest of the believers in terms of Iman are the companions of Allah's Messenger ﷺ, and so therefore they have the greatest degree of loyalty, aid, support, love, for them. Similarly, another evidence, that verse basically was in Surah At-Tawbah, Surah 9, verse 71. Another proof in the Quran to show that loving the Sahaba is deen is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَالَّذِينَ جَاءُوا مِن بَعْدِهِمْ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَا بِالْإِيمَانِ وَلَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلًّا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Right? Those who come after them, they say, O our Lord, forgive us and our brothers who preceded us in Iman, and do not put in our hearts any aversion or hatred towards those who believe. Right? So this is praise of the Sahaba who came before, and it mentions how those who come afterwards, they make dua for them, and they do not have any aversion in their hearts towards them. This is now another proof to show that loving the Sahaba, having loyalty to them, is itself deen, right? By virtue of what we find in these verses, right? So this is the first angle. That the first angle of proof really is the fact that Allah in these verses has put this loyalty and love between the believers. He's placed it between all of the believers. Right? This is what these two verses show. Right? So meaning that there's loyalty and love between the companions and obviously all of the rest of the believers. So from that angle, loving the companions is deen. From the second angle, that loving the companions is deen, is from the angle that we are making tasdeeq, right? From the angle that we are accepting and believing what Allah has said in the Quran, because He praised them, right? And He declared them to be trustworthiness, He guaranteed them paradise, and so on and so forth, right? He spoke of the Muhajirin and spoke of the Ansar, and He spoke about the people who gave the Pledge of Allegiance, right? All of these, and in general, Muhammadun Rasulullah, وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُم. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those who are with him, are severe against or stern against the kuffar, and merciful amongst themselves. So here what we are doing is we are making tasdeeq, we are believing what the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what Allah said about the Messenger and his companions. Another verse is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal at the end of Surah Al-Fath. Surah Al-Fath. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ مِنْهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Allah has promised those who believe and do righteous deeds among them. Right? The key word here is minhum in the ayah, among them. He has promised them forgiveness and a great reward. So there's a discussion as to what is this minhum in this ayah, what purpose is it serving? What does it mean here? Right? Is it, and the scholars mention like two, is it bayaniyya or is it tabi'idiyya? Right? There's a discussion. The difference between the two is like this. If you didn't add the word minhum in the ayah, if you just said وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا, Allah has promised those who believe and do righteous deeds forgiveness and a great reward. This would apply to the whole of the ummah. This applies to everybody, right? The Sahaba, Tabi'een, Tabi'een, everybody else who comes till Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is what it would mean. But because the word minhum has been inserted in there, what's the function of this? Right? Is it to say that from all of those who are believing and doing righteous deeds, that there are some among them who are basically guaranteed forgiveness and a great reward, and they are the companions? Right? Because remember, the ayah and the surah, in fact, Surah Al-Fath, the 48th chapter, is speaking about the Messenger of Allah and the companions and the treaty that they made and the victory and so on and so forth, right? So this is unique to the companions. And so this is what is correct. This is what is correct. This is how the Mufassirun and the scholars, and this is how they explain it. That this qualification here, minhum, it's a qualification to refer to the Sahaba specifically. Obviously, those people who are opposed to the Sahaba, like the Rafidah, the Shia and other people, they will then try to interpret this to mean something else. They interpret this verse to mean that only some of the companions are promised this forgiveness and the reward. Right? So meaning, to them it would be just like the 3 or 4 whom they, the 3 that they believe were believers. All the rest were disbelievers. So it's as if the meaning of this verse is that, amongst the companions would be Ali and the Ahlul Bayt, and then the 3 other companions, they claim that they were also believers, all the rest were disbelievers. So the verse applies only to them. Right? So they are making it basically tabi'idiyya. The minhum is basically is particularizing and speaking only of one part of a whole. Right? So there's these two interpretations. And so as the scholars have explained, that the purpose of the particle minhum is to explain the jins, the category. It's the category of the Sahaba as opposed to the rest of the ummah. Right? That's the meaning of this ayah. So the point being that this is another verse from which we can see is a proof that loving the Sahaba is deen. Right? These are evidences to show that loving the Sahaba is deen. Okay, so that was, remember, At-Tahawi said that وَحُبُّهُمْ دِينٌ وَإِيمَانٌ وَإِحْسَانٌ. We've covered the first one, deen, and the angle from which it is deen. The second thing is iman. How is loving the Sahaba iman? Well, it is a wajib that Allah has made obligatory upon us by way of the Quran. And anything that Allah makes wajib, it is from iman, by necessity. Right? Whatever Allah commands, it is from iman, by necessity. And so this is the angle from which hubbus Sahaba, loving the Sahaba, is iman. In fact, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he specifically said, very explicitly, he said, Ayatul Mu'min, he said, Ayatul Iman, Hubbul Ansar. Ayatul Iman, Hubbul Ansar. Wa Ayatul Nifaq, Bughdul Ansar. The sign of Iman is loving the Ansar. And the sign of hypocrisy is hating the Ansar. Right? So now this is very clear that Hubbus Sahaba is Iman. What about the third thing? Ihsan. Right? Loving the Sahaba is deen and Iman and Ihsan. So what is the third thing? The evidence for the third thing. The third thing is that the person who loves the companions, it shows that he is muhsin fi dinihi. He is muhsin fi dinihi. Meaning that he is someone who has benevolence and he has goodness in his religion, and out of that goodness, from that goodness, is that he's loving the companions. Right? So this is the angle from which it is ihsan, it is benevolence and goodness, and also perfection, because ihsan is also perfection in religion, to love the companions. So this is the angle from which it is ihsan. So this was point number 6, and point number 7, At-Tahaawiyyah said, وَبُغْضُهُمْ كُفْرٌ وَنِفَاقٌ وَطُغْيَانٌ. Right? To hate the Sahaba is bughd and nifaq and tughyan. So what are the angles from which this is kufr, nifaq and tughyan? So first of all, with respect to kufr, then obviously we discussed this previously. If it is the hatred that we discussed in types 1 and 2 earlier, the hatred of rejection of all the companions, or hatred of them taghayyudan, then no doubt this is what is kufr. And if it is dislike on account of affairs of the world, or some things that they did, or some choices that they made, then this does not enter into major disbelief. Right? It is not major disbelief. It is basically like a minor type of disbelief. So as we said, this can be the angle of it being disbelief is very clear. We discussed it already. As for the second issue, وَنِفَاقٌ, it is hypocrisy. This is because a sign of hypocrisy is to hate the people who carried this religion. A sign of hypocrisy is to have hatred for the people who conveyed this religion, who are the companions. And we know that they are the ones who preserved, they memorized the Quran, they preserved the Sunnah, they had fiqh in the religion, they conveyed the rulings, they strove in the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. And who were the ones who hated the companions? It was the munafiqun. It was the hypocrites in the time of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Right? And so, al-munafiqun wal-munafiqat ba'duhum min ba'd. Right? The hypocrites men and the hypocrites the women, they are of each other. They are of each other. They are not of the believers. Right? So this is the angle from which hating the companions is nifaq. This is the evidence from this verse, Surah At-Tawbah, chapter 9, verse 67. And this nifaq, this hypocrisy, it can either be the hypocrisy of disbelief, or it can be, it could be a different type of hypocrisy, where it could be, it depends, like if it's from the other types of dislike, which is not disbelief, then it could be like the minor form of hypocrisy. So this is nifaq. And thirdly, tughyan, transgression. How is it transgression? Well, it's very clear, because a person has transgressed the limits that Allah Azza wa Jal has set, in His book, and that the Messenger of Allah has set in His Sunnah. Right? Allah praised them. He praised them, made thana of them. He's pleased with them. So any person who is not like this, then he has transgressed the limits. This is very clear. This is tughyan, right? Transgress the limits of the Quran and the Sunnah. So this is point number 7 to explain how hating the companions is kufr and nifaq and tughyan. And we come to the final point number 8, which is the fact that the scholars of the Muslims have written works, they've written books in defense of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, and they've written books to outline how they should be loved and praised, and they mentioned the seerah of the companions, the reports from the companions. And so this point really, point number 8 is really, the point here is that to defend the companions is from al-jihad fi sabilillah. Right? It is from al-jihad fi sabilillah. And to strive against the people, against the Rafidah, against the Shia, against any group or faction that speaks ill of the companions in any way possible, then it is from al-jihad fi sabilillah to refute them and to author works against them and to refute their shubuhat. Why? Because this is from the muqtada, it's from the requirements of hub and walaya, from love and loyalty. It is necessitated, right? You can't claim that I love so-and-so, and as he's being beaten and mugged, you stand there watching. Or you can't claim I love so-and-so, and as his honor is being reviled and attacked and belittled, you are sat there silent. It's simply not possible, right? So from the muqtada, from the requirements of hub and walaya, is nusra, is ad-difa' wa nusra, what ta'yeed, it's a support, aid, defense. And so for that reason, we see that even the authors of the books of hadith, like Al-Bukhari, Muslim and others, within their books, they included, within their Sahih compilations, they authored books in which, for example, they were the manaqib al-Sahaba, right? The virtues of the Sahaba. And so either you find like specific authorships, Fada'il al-Sahaba, Manaqib al-Sahaba, like in the books of hadith, or there are specific authorships, independent authorships, where books have been written in defense of either the companions as a whole, or of specific companions that we find, that have been written by many of the scholars. So the point being that all of this is from min al-jihad fi sabilillah wa min al-bayan lil ummah, is from striving in the path of Allah, and it is from explaining the truth and the realities to the rest of the ummah. So these are 8 points, and they very nicely and concisely summarize how we ought to view the companions and look at the issue of the status of the companions. And so this kind of really concludes our lesson, or this short 2-lesson series on the status of the companions. That concludes this topic, inshallah ta'ala, and this brings us to an end to our lesson. And so in the next series of lessons, inshallah ta'ala, just before Ramadan, we will most likely discuss the topic of Allah's names and attributes by way of a small risala written by one of the scholars, Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi, from the 5th century. And he has a small, it's just literally 2-3 pages, Mas'alatun fi Sifat, where he very nicely, concisely brings together how we ought to believe in the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. Because it's a small risala, very small, very short, inshallah, it will be nice to go through. And it brings together like some of the foundational principles. So that will be our topic in the next series. And so we have the Arabic text and the translation. So inshallah, we'll print them out and give everybody a copy, inshallah ta'ala, to go through for the series of lessons. So that will be the next series. Inshallah, we'll start next week, have a few lessons before Ramadan, inshallah. And with that, we'll conclude today's session. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.